So today is the first Thanksgiving without two important women that have been in my life. Um, and I've been trying to make this video because I feel like I should for some reason. And I've avoided it, but I don't know. Hopefully, this will help me get through, deal with some of that. I don't know, but yeah. This year I've had to deal with grief in a way that I haven't had to before. And it's not that I haven't lost. It's not that I haven't lost people in my family before, but I think that I did it at such an earlier age. I think that it didn't fully stick with or resonate with me in the same way. I think with some of those people, I hadn't had the opportunity to build the same relationships and kind of share the same memories that stick with you. But these two in particular, they hurt a lot, and they happened within a month of each other. I guess so. I'm headed home to be with my family, and I figured I've got 2 hours to drive. It might be a good time to process some of that while I go. So, yeah. August 13th of this year, my Aunt Kelly May passed away. And I don't know, it's one of those things that you can't say was fully like unexpected on the day that it happened. Months before, I can't remember how many months before at this point, it had been a little while. She had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in a place that was pretty hard to treat. But after that diagnosis, like they had given her treatments and stuff like that that were seeming to work pretty well for her. And so for a while, it kind of seemed like we were out of the woods. Like it was a very scary diagnosis when we heard it, but once it seemed like things were cool, like the thought of anything worse happening kind of left my mind. Until I guess maybe a few weeks before, it seemed like things were kind of starting to go back in a bad direction. She had kind of been in and out of the hospital and different things like that. And so the day that she passed, I was kind of talking to my mom. It happens back and forth of like, should I go down to visit her, or will I wait till the weekend after, to go see her? Because at that point, she was in the hospital again, but I knew she wasn't alone because one of my aunts was there to check in on her. And so I figured to try and stop myself from doing too much, that I would just wait a weekend. But then it didn't seem like that was the best option anymore. And so I did go down and see her. She was unresponsive at the moment that I got there. She would respond to your touch, and she would kind of maybe open her eyes and look at you a little bit, but you weren't, at the point that I got there, like there wasn't much conversation anymore, or there wasn't any conversation rather. And so for hours we were just kind of there. We were I don't know, just for me, it was being able to be in her presence was enough. And I mean, thinking about the life that she lived, like I think saying that, like it lines up, because my aunt was known to be this this light to the people that she was close to. She was known for her laugh and for her smile. Weren't particularly you wouldn't particularly hear her complaining about how she was doing or how she was feeling or whatever. Now sometimes I don't know. It was just it was a lot more like we knew her for the special dishes she made for family reunions, which were peach cobbler and biscuits, among other things. And yeah, we knew her for her love for God and how much she tried to share that with people, whether they wanted to hear it or not, or whether they were ready to receive it or not. And so yeah, it was similar to when she was able to respond. Being able to just be in her presence at that moment, it still meant something, even though it wasn't getting able to have that conversation that I might have hoped to have had, which probably just would have been to say, "Hey, I love you," and to hear it back, I think is what I might have wanted. So yeah, that day we got down there with the rest of my family who was able to be there, and we sat, we prayed, we laughed, we joked, we shared different memories at times, poked fun at each other, just did what families do. And yeah, I think we had gotten to the end of the night, and it seemed like things weren't great, but we didn't have any feeling that things were going to get worse. Like we kind of talked about how she was the day before, how she was moving around a lot and up and down, and then she just kind of took a turn. And so at the point that we were talking with the nurses and doctors at the hospital, we were moving her over to hospice care, and just kind of going to go from there. But then I think just one of the nurses doing her rounds came in to check her vitals. And they didn't look great at all. Blood pressure numbers were dropping, pulse was still fine, and the nurse seemed a little flustered, so we couldn't tell if it was just something like it was her first time doing that or what it was. And so my mom, being a nurse, got her to do what she would have done if she was in that position, which was switch the blood pressure cuff from one side to the other, just to make sure there's nothing going on with the cuff or just that arm or something, and see what's happening. And at the point that they switched the cuff from one over to the other, blood pressure was still in a bad place, but now the pulse had dropped too. And the final sign we got was that she was using a mask to help push air in for her. And normally the way it works is she has to push the air back out in order for it's a back and forth kind of thing. And so my mom noticed that the machine wasn't doing anything anymore. She had stopped breathing out until the machine had stopped pushing air back in. And so just like that, she was gone. And I think that might have been the first time I had been in the room with somebody that passed, and it definitely was at any age close to now. And so I don't know. I went through a mix of trying to hold it together to make sure my mom was good and could not be together, because that's my mom's sister. Trying to, I don't know, just be there, but also I just kept getting confronted with the fact that my aunt wasn't here anymore and isn't here anymore. And I don't know, like I think I ended up calling my brother. I had to call my Uncle James. But I ended up calling my brother Dominique to let him know. And then after, I called my sister too. And I don't know, it's one of those things where, like, the more you say it, the more real it feels. And that's kind of why it's been so hard for me, because like I said, I've wanted to make this video, or felt the need to make this video since these things happen, but I've also kind of pushed back against it because it feels like the more you say it, the more real it becomes. And so yeah, I called my brother, and just like my voice was just shaking and trying to want to rave, because I didn't want to have to say it out loud that our aunt was gone, that he wouldn't get the chance to see her again, that my sister wouldn't get the chance to see her again. And it sucks. It sucks. But again, my aunt was one of the biggest believers in God outwardly in our family. One of the things that was in the obituary that I didn't particularly know, because like when I would see her, when I would have conversations with her, it was particularly like at family reunions, or when we would go down to visit her, to visit family, which wasn't as often as I feel like it should have been, especially now. In the obituary, they said that she would always remind you to, like, check on your soul, to take care of your soul, which I think is a special thing, because we think a lot about, and even though we don't do the best about taking care of our outward or our physical appearance, but that soul thing, that thing that only God can work out with you, we miss a lot. And because she was so focused on God and wanting to do what he said, and wanting to encourage us to do the same, like, that was how she chose to end her phone calls with her family. And I think in knowing that, it takes away some of that sadness, because we know that she isn't here suffering, that she is exactly where she wanted to go. And somebody said that before she stopped talking, one of the last things that she had said was that she wanted to go home. And of course, we can pick and choose. Oh, obviously she may have wanted to go to her physical house, but I think, knowing her well enough, the only home that she was ever concerned about going to was her heavenly one, because as much as we wanted her to stay here, like unless they came up with some magical cure, like her time being at her physical home on this earth would have been with more pain, with more worry about if this cancer thing was going to come back and prevent her from being able to eat, prevent her from being able to truly enjoy being around her family and all of that. And so it's like to this day, like I still want her to be here. Like I wish I could hear that loud, that joyful, that full of cheer laugh one more time. And I can't get that, and but I know that's okay because I know that for me to get that, she would have been having to fight through pain at this point to get that. Like, and she would have because that's how she was. Like again, she wasn't particularly the type that was complaining a lot. She was there. She would do what she could, and that's it. She loved you, and hey, everything else was it was what it was. And so I think, I don't know, I guess one of the I think when I originally wanted to make this video, it was about grief. It was about how that is such a weird thing because of the different ways that it shows up. But I think one of the beautiful things in having to grieve her is being able to see, not being able to remember, one, being able to remember how she touched my life, but two, being able to see how she touched the lives of the other people that knew her from her hometown, because I don't live there, and so I didn't get to see how she touched those people, but the stories were the same. She was always there when you needed her. She, for her pastor, like she was there when he started at that church and took him in and made him feel welcome and all these things. Like it was that same light, that same energy that I mentioned that we were able to experience as her family, being pushed out everywhere. And so I think that in and of itself is something beautiful that I am holding on to, and hope that I can bring out in my life as well, because I think one of the things that she did do, that my aunt did do, was embody that light of the world scripture really well. We're supposed to be the light. We're supposed to show up and show the love of God on this earth so that other people can see him instead of just all of the other negative things. And so I know for a fact that my aunt was able to do that, not just in my life, but in other people's as well. And so I pray that I do whatever it takes, whatever I need to do to embody that as well. Now, a month later, After my aunt passed, my grandmother passed as well. And I guess thinking of, her last years, I can't even remember how many at this point she would say this, but it really shouldn't have been a surprise either. Definitely a shock, but not a surprise, because she would tell us whenever we come to town to visit for holidays, or whenever we go to see her at the nursing home or whatever, that she might not be there when we got back, or she might not make it to another birthday, or she was about to die, or whatever. In a joking and playful way sometimes, in a serious way others. But I don't know, one thing we kind of got in that was that she was ready. My grandma passed on September 9th. Peacefully in her sleep, which I'm grateful for. And I had planned to go home the next weekend, similar to how I had talked about with my aunt. This time I just wasn't able to get there. But my grandma, I think one of the ways that people described her at her funeral was that she had a presence. And I think what a lot of people meant when they said that was that she told it like it was. She wasn't the type to sugarcoat, or the type to try and make you feel better, or like try to dance around something to make you feel better. Like if something was an issue, you knew. If she needed something, you knew. If she thought you were a little too fat or a little too skinny or whatever it is, like you knew. And I don't know, I was talking to one of my best friends about her when she passed, and just thinking about how much that, I don't know how much that can be like overlooked, or it could seem like this bad thing that she's being so open and honest in those moments where she's telling you things that you don't want to hear and sometimes didn't ask for. But at the same time, her being that open, honest, and genuine in my eyes made it much more clear that when she told you she loved you, she meant it. Because you knew it wasn't hidden behind some, it wasn't like a platitude, or she wasn't just saying it because you wanted to hear it or needed to hear it. It was her communicating her honest and true feelings. And I don't know, that there's something special about that you don't have to question. Where's that love coming from, other than from just the truest place in her? And outside of that, like, my grandma was, I'd say, a protector. One of the stories that I have the joy of being able to tell, although I don't fully remember it, is that my grandma taught me how to fight as a kid. There was somebody bullying me, elementary school. I would come home with like knots in my head. And I told my grandma about it. And she told me what to do. She told me exactly how to handle it. And like I said, I don't fully remember going and doing it, but my grandma always told me was I came back the next day and I said that I got him. And so, I don't know, protect her in that way. And I think one of my most recent favorite memories of my grandma was because I was talking to my best friend. My friend Christian was telling me about a time where he came home with me for my mom's birthday. We were just kind of standing around, celebrating, eating, all that good stuff. And he talked about how my grandma would just have like these random serious moments, and she would just tell you something that she knew you needed to hear or wanted to make sure you heard before she was gone or something. Whether it be asking you about prayer or the scripture or something, asking you if you prayed or prayed for her, all of those things. But he said in that moment, she turned to him and told him to make sure that he looks out for me when she's gone. And I hadn't heard that story until she passed. But it speaks volumes to who she is and how she is. She, like I said, was at peace with what was going to happen at some point, even though it came years and years after she claimed it would. But in knowing that, she made it a point to talk to one of my friends to make sure that I was still cared for when she wasn't here, to make sure I still had some level of protection around me, and that, I mean, I need it, so I'm grateful. And so I miss my grandma, but I'm grateful for everything that she did, that she showed me. She's the reason that I know how to make grits, and make them, I think, well. I apologize to the people who I oversalted them for while I was learning, but I don't know. I think I got sad because my grandma, she was, and I don't know, it's hard to, it just becomes one of those selfish things where it's like, I want my grandma here forever. But again, my grandma was ready to go too. But and part of that having to do with her being sick and not being able to do for herself as much as she used to be able to. And so I understand that. And at the same time, that her not being able to do for herself gave me a lot more time when I would come home from college and stuff like that, or when I would come home from living in Dallas, to spend time with her, to cook for her, to just make more memories with her. Because when she could do for herself, we could still go to her house, but at some point she would kick us out. But when it was at this point, like, she would have to beg us to leave. Or she wouldn't beg us to leave. She would want us to stay and be around and bring food or whatever. And so I don't know. I guess I'm just here to say I'm grateful, Grandma, for everything that you did, for everything that you taught me, for everything that you put in place for me, for every prayer that you said for me, all the love that you gave me, the fighting lessons that you gave me, all the love. I'm grateful that God gave me someone like you to miss. And I'm grateful that I can continue to carry a piece of you with me, not only in taking things from and learning to walk out life in the way that you did, but also in my name. I'm grateful that we share that. I'm grateful that I know you, and I'm also sad for the moments that I won't get to share with you. You won't get to see me get married or have kids or all of those things. My kids won't get to meet you in person and feel that love that I got to feel. But I'll take that as my charge to make sure they feel it, make sure they know who you were to me and how you were to me. Thank you. Lord, I thank you. I thank you for all of it.